Good morning, Nick. Thank you for joining me today. Can you introduce yourself to the members?
Yes, I'm Nicholas Shallcross. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the University of Arkansas, and I'm also an active duty Army officer. And I've been an Informed member since 2016.
Great, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into the field of ORMS or analytics?
Sure. Probably my story is a little bit different from a lot of other members. Like I said, I'm an active duty Army officer. I'm a lieutenant colonel. I've been in the Army now for 17 years. And around the time of about your 10-year mark in service, at least for my year group, this has changed since then. You would have to put in for a functional area as part of your branch choice. So the Army would tell you what your kind of your more middle management job would be if we're equated to a civilian institution. And I was wanting to stay in my current branch, which was armor and cavalry. And I had put that down as my number one choice. And then I had also selected some other what we call functional areas in the Army, one of them being operations research, which was FA-49. And I was in Iraq at the time, and I filled out the basically all the paperwork that I had to do to try to stay in my branch, and I signed it off. Didn't think anything of it. I got back from Iraq, so this would be 2010. Okay. And after I got back from leave, I'm checking my email in my office in my troop, and I see this email saying "Welcome to OR branch," and I was shocked because I really wasn't wanting to change my branch at the time, but I decided that this is a new opportunity, so I would try it out, and as a result, I was able to go out to Washington, D.C. and work at Center for Army Analysis. Then from there, the Army sent me to get a master's and now a PhD. So I have a little bit more roundabout way to come into the branch or into the profession of OR and MS, but that's my story there.
So how much did you know about operations research before you filled out that paperwork?
I knew nothing about it. So I saw that I had a degree that was in line with their requirements. And that was the thing that you're always told is make sure any functional needs put down, you have to be suitable for, whether it's the experience or background education suitable for the position. So I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. Okay. And so I was, I had a proper degree for that. So I put it down, but I didn't really know anything about it until I went out to the operations research military applications course at Fort Lee, Virginia. And that's where I actually learned about what operations research ORMS is.
Okay. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but then can you talk about how the Army influenced this career path into OR, or was that pretty much how it started and now that's where you are?
That's how it started. So I was told to do it, and I've tried to make the most of the opportunities that have been presented for me. And I've, my younger self, go back to 2011, I was probably a little distraught that I was going to be going to a functional area. I would say that was absolutely the right call, given everything I've done since then.
Good.
In terms of my career path in the Army, a lot of the stuff I've done has focused around senior level decision making, and that's kind of always been my emphasis: is how can I better inform complex decisions, and that's really been my path, is moving between assignments that have allowed me to do
that. A little bit off the cuff here. Quick question for you: when I meet somebody who is a service member, I am always inclined to say, thank you for your service. I was once told by a former service member that saying is sort of meaningless now because it's just used so commonly. Do you feel the same way?
So I don't necessarily know if it's meaningless. I guess maybe my way of putting it is it makes me uncomfortable when people say it to me. I don't know why. It's just I always say thank you and you're welcome.
Yeah.
Try to be gracious about it, but it always makes me a little uncomfortable. I know other people feel the same way, and not that at least for me, I don't mind that people say it, and I don't necessarily think it's meaningless, but it does make me uncomfortable. Maybe because I don't necessarily do it be recognized or thanked, and maybe that's maybe underlying reason.
Yeah. Would you suggest something else that people could say? Because people, I think, and myself, I genuinely want to thank you. So would you rather us not say anything or just say that and have a little bit of awkwardness?
No, if you feel inclined to say it, I think you should say it, and I think you should say it just as you did. I think it just needs to be, um, heartfelt. Maybe some people feel it's maybe a little bit of pandering, or not. I don't necessarily think that, but I would say just say it how it is, and or how you had said it, and if you mean it, then I think it's perfectly fine to say it. I will probably always feel a little awkward. I never tell people I'm in the military, or I never try to go and get like discounts. That always
Oh,
brings me the wrong way. So I try not to bring up my service, just because again it makes me a little uncomfortable to be
oh.
thanked, be given things for doing it. So
You should. I mean, we use my husband's teacher discount whenever we can, so go for it.
yeah, it's my thought is I get compensated very well for being uh, in the service, and not just in salary, but they sent me to they paid for all three of my degrees. So
Yeah,
I figure that's thanks enough, and I don't necessarily feel that I'm needing it anymore. So
it's true. Well, thank you for answering that. Can you talk a little bit about any research you're working on right now?
my research at the University of Arkansas, so this is what my whole dissertation is on, is how to again, it goes back to decision making. I'm a decision analyst, and that's why I came here to Arkansas, was to study under Dr. Greg Parnell, who's my advisor. He's a noted expert in decision analysis. Um, anyway, so I'm working on how to better inform very complex decisions, and I'm using a design process called set-based design to develop some of these techniques. Set-based design is a concurrent engineering methodology that, instead of developing one or two like what's called point designs, where we say here's an alternative, here's an alternative, it develops a huge number of them, millions. So I'll generate a million different designs and start going through, looking at them in different sets. And a set is similar design options that have one design feature in common. And I start looking through the design space that way. And a lot of my research is how do we better make decisions, and how to reduce the design space in terms that enable system robustness and resiliency in the face of aleatory uncertainties, which is just natural randomness that we can't necessarily resolve, we can make resilient to, and how we can reduce epistemic or knowledge uncertainty by using value of information and information entropy and some other techniques in these multi-objective decision problems to converge this design space and identify optimal designs that are that best represent all the stakeholders involved in these decisions. So
Very good. What advice do you have for new students entering this field? I know your path has been a little bit different, but do you have any advice for young students who might want to enter OR field?
yeah, I do. So I thought about this question quite a bit, and my thought is that for anyone entering in this field, they probably have either a passion for math or analysis, which is really good. And it's obviously a major criteria if you're wanting to do this. But my advice is that doing this job means that you're ultimately informing decisions for a decision maker. And probably the best way you can do that is to be a leader or a decision maker yourself. So if you're going to go into this field, seek opportunities to become leaders, because if you know what type of information you want to make decisions as a leader, when you're helping inform those decisions, you kind of take a look at it from that leadership perspective, and you're not just doing analysis for analysis sake. You're actually sitting there trying to provide the best information to help inform something that's probably very complex.
Right. So think about what would I want to know as a leader, and then be able to provide that information as
Exactly.
who's informing decisions. Great.
And you see a lot of great, that caveat on that. You see a lot of great analysis being done, but sometimes it's not necessarily helping inform anything.
Mhm.
And especially in busy organizations, you don't necessarily have time or the resources to waste on those efforts. Not that they're wasted efforts, but if you're not informing the decision, they're not necessarily helpful. So it's really important that whatever you do helps, inform these decisions or helps inform the organizational attitude towards whatever project you're working on.
Right. And a lot of times these leaders aren't as familiar with analytics, so they don't know what they don't know or what they need to know. So you're the one that needs to provide that, correct?
Exactly. And it's very easy to give them the wrong thing or give him or her the wrong thing.
Mhm.
And they will, leaders are smart. They'll come to realize that they're not getting the information they need, and you'll end up losing relevancy. So it's very important that you, as an analyst, understand what you're doing from that leadership perspective.
Okay, good advice. What would be your dream job after you've completed your PhD?
So I'm going back to the Army. Obviously, I'm still in the Army, and
Yeah.
so I'll finish up my degree here in a couple of months.
Oh, good. Congrats.
I will owe another 6 years to the Army, which will put me out into my mid-20s in terms of time in service. I think my dream job in the Army is probably what I'll be doing next, doing analysis for complex problems, which is what I came in for.
Mhm.
I'd like to be able to do that at where I'm going at it's the Research and Analysis Center at Fort Leavenworth, but also do it for other senior decision makers in the Army. After the Army, I think I'd like to do that, but do it for myself. So be my own boss, and either consult or work as a independent contractor to
Right.
work on similar type problems. So
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get there. Can you talk a little bit about how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your last year? We're coming up on our year anniversary now of.
sure. So given my background and what I do, especially because I do a lot of stuff for national security, I've been tracking the spread of the coronavirus disease since about August of 2019.
Oh.
And so I've been kind of watching it progress as it progressed through China, and then Korea, and then Europe, and then here. To the point where, when I went out to Informs in October of 2019, I was very curious if people were already sick on the West
Mhm.
Coast. I'm actually from Tacoma, Washington.
Okay.
And so I was already curious if people were sick on the West Coast. And we had a friend whose mother was in a coma with an unidentified respiratory disease in October. And we went and saw her while I was out at Informs. So I started at that point in time, when I got back to Arkansas, making plans to transition my office from school to my home office, which you see here, which required that I had the ability to patch into my computers at school, into our Linux servers and all that, so I can continue my research. The lucky thing for me was that I was finishing up my last classes that semester. So by the time I moved into the spring semester of 2020, I had no classes. It was all research. And when school shut down in mid-March, my office at home was already set up, and I basically, instead of going into school like I normally did on March 18th, I think it was, I just went to my office here and continued to work. So long story short is, in terms of my research, it hasn't really been a big disruption for me. I've been able to stay on track. In fact, I play a little ahead of schedule right now, which is nice. And I know that I'm probably already out there, so I feel very blessed that it hasn't really affected me negatively. It's been a little bit harder on my wife. She works at the VA hospital, so her life has been a little bit more difficult over the past year. But
Sure.
all in all, our lives didn't change. They weren't turned on their heads like they were with other people, which I'm thankful for.
Yes. Are you taking classes in person right now, or are they still virtual?
So they're doing a mixture of. So obviously I'm out of class, so I don't need to do that. But the university is doing a mixture of both in person and virtual classes.
Okay.
So when we had a bad, and I'm sure everyone was tracking the weather that came through the area a couple weeks ago. what they did is students were in class. They didn't even have like really having snow days, because when they left school because they couldn't come in, they just did virtual classes. So there's this kind of this hybrid learning delivery that they've been doing, which is, I think, worked pretty well for them.
Yeah, that seems to be the norm right now. Next question. What is your favorite method of visualizing data? If you have one.
So I actually thought about this question quite a bit, and I think probably the best answer I can give is my favorite method for visualizing data is whatever method most succinctly gets the point across. I don't necessarily have a favorite
Yeah.
method. I know there's a lot of people out there that say, "Oh, I like this type of software, like
Mhm.
Tableau or something," or I like to show, tornado diagrams or scatter charts or whatever. And my thought is that I like whatever method most clearly gets the point across, and it only needs to be as complex as it needs to be. So, if we're talking about something that's very complex, it's probably going to be a little bit more complex method, but whatever gets that point across most clearly and simplistically, and that can be whether it's visual data visualization, whether it's tabular form, or even if it's a word picture where I write something out, or a combination of all three. So.
I want to congratulate you on receiving the 2019 Bonder Scholarship for Applied OR in Military and Security Applications. Can you talk a bit about how this award has affected your career in any way, or your schooling?
So one of the benefits of being an Army officer where they send you to get your degree is that I don't have to worry about funding or anything. I have my salary is already paid for, my school's already paid for. All I have to do is be a full-time student. What that, at least in my case, this is not necessarily every military officer who's going through a PhD doesn't have this problem, but in my case, I didn't necessarily have an outside agency that I was working for in terms of like a client who was sponsoring my research.
Mhm.
We tried to get it, but working through a government bidding program, but we weren't selected, unfortunately. And as a result, I had to basically I had to become my own client and figure out what I was wanting to do for my research. But what the Seth Bonder Foundation did is they gave me this very generous scholarship and a fellowship, and combined with the Bradley Foundation, who I received a couple of General Lamar Bradley Foundation fellowships, is that Seth Bonder and the Bradley organizations have been basically my clients. So I produce research, and I always make sure I thank them. And they've given me the motivation to do very high quality. Not that I wouldn't have done high quality work, but I want to do very high quality work for them, since I'm putting their names on things, and that it's. So in terms of the question of how has it affected my career or my studies, it's been a motivating factor to ensure that I'm delivering high quality analysis and research. I imagine if COVID hadn't hit, there would probably have been a little bit more networking opportunities I would have been able to take part in. But obviously that's been kind of disrupted over the last year, but hopefully those opportunities will be there again in the future.
Yes. What's another passion you have outside of OR and decision making?
So I really like probably two things. I really like history. So I do a lot, I like history. I like old things. And I also like mountain climbing. Those are kind of the two things I'm really interested in. So again, being stuck here this past year, it really is, I've had to live vicariously through people on the internet. But I really enjoy both history, which I can read at home, which is nice, and mountain climbing all over the world, whether it's in the Rockies or the Cascades, or even more remote places like what you'd see in the Karakoram or the Andes, or any place like that. So
Cool. What advice would you give to your younger self? Anything you wish you knew then that you know now?
I'd probably say be more patient and let things develop. I tend to I like to be in control. So if things are progressing at my timeline, I'm generally pretty happy. When I wait on other people outside organizations, I tend to get a little frustrated. And I think that's advice I'd give my current self now.
Yeah.
But, I was not a patient person when I first came into the field. And I've grown more patient, but I still need to work on it. But I'd say probably be more patient and let things develop, because they'll usually will work out for the best.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for anybody in any situation. Patience. If you could have dinner with one famous person from history, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
So I was thinking about this because there's probably a lot of people I'd like to have dinner with.
Agreed.
I think
Yeah.
it actually comes down to it came down to a couple of folks, but I think of who I would choose. I would choose the Roman uh, philosopher and statesman Seneca, who was I'm a I like Roman Stoicism, the philosophy of Roman Stoicism. So in studying that, I came across a lot of very interesting individuals, and Seneca being most noteworthy among them, besides maybe Marcus Aurelius. And he was a very interesting person. And given that I thought he is a man of high moral courage, but he was also one of the main advisors to the Roman Emperor Nero, who was a despot, to say the least. So I think being able to have dinner with him to discuss that would be incredibly interesting. How you
Very
conflict
good.
those two different worlds.
I will Google those names after this interview.
You look at Seneca the Younger.
Okay. Thank you. Which social network do you use the most these days?
So
Keep in touch.
it's probably in terms of keeping in touch. If I'm keeping in touch with family, it's probably Facebook. I don't necessarily maintain apps on my phone or anything anymore. As unfortunately, they're not necessarily a healthy outlet. But if I'm going to keep in touch with family or friends, it's probably through Facebook. Professional networks, I use LinkedIn, and then I also have a probably more active participation on Researchgate, at least as a student. And in terms of maybe the three social media networks I use, it's probably Researchgate is the one that gets a majority of my time if I'm on one of those three platforms. I find LinkedIn is very good for staying in contact with professional groups, especially groups as opposed to individuals. There's a lot of good information that's usually posted by organizations that I like to see. So,
is ResearchGate networking, or I know that there's pre-published papers there, right? Typically,
yeah, it's not necessarily. There is some networking that you can do in terms of if you can follow and be followed, just like you would be on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But you can also follow publications, and I find it's very interesting.
Okay.
It's very useful for finding new research or research that's similar to your field, and then also getting your research out there. I work as part of the System Design and Analytics Laboratory here at the University of Arkansas, so I try to do things that help promote that lab on ResearchGate. So.
Okay, cool. Desert Island question. What 3 things would you bring with you?
Can't
be people. People always try to say, I'm bringing these people. Things.
Yeah, I looked up that question because I heard people ask it before, but I'd never been asked it myself. I think the only time I've ever been asked something similar was like desert island like movies. So I wanted to Google like what else did people say? What else did people bring people? Where there was always like survival items or things of that nature. And I thought they were probably missing the point, because I think the point of the desert island question is that you're in a situation where you have no control. So how do you go with the flow? And my thought was the 3 things I would bring would probably be a big umbrella or a tarp for shade, a nice chair for sitting, and then a telescope to see the things that I can't see.
There you go. That works. What's your favorite thing about Informs? Being an Informs member?
Probably being able to keep in contact and see people I've worked with in the past. So I see other ORSAs military horses that it informs that I might not see too regularly,
Mhm.
or I get to re-engage with old professors, especially professors that I knew at the Air Force Institute of Technology, where I got my master's from. They usually have a fairly heavy presence at Inform, so I always like going there and seeing them. Um, I do like going in for some of the research briefs. There are always some very high quality ones, which are nice to get. But I think it's being able to stay in contact with other people in the field and the professional development you get from that contact.
Final question. Do you read ORMS today?
Uh, I do, but probably not as regularly as
Okay.
maybe they would hope, just because of time. So
Yes.
I get the digital copy of it, obviously,
Mhm.
and I'll definitely peruse through it every time I get it. But given that sometimes my time is limited, I don't
Okay.
necessarily read it probably to the full extent that maybe they would hope that I would. But I do read it, and I do pay attention to it.
Okay. You know what it is. That's a good start. It's good enough for me. Well, thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much.